So a little bit about your life and your childhood and all of that, the basic, simple question.
So I think since we're talking about inspiring people, for me, like I think since childhood, I've always seen like women in the workforce. My mom's always worked, so it's just something I've always seen growing up.
Mm-hmm.
That along with having the whole family of entrepreneurs, at least for me, with mom, dad, my grandparents, whatever, it just has always been the kind of environment where you see yourself growing up to become someone who runs either a company of some sort or maybe starts their own thing. I feel like I was a very rebellious child
Okay.
because it was always like people would tell me, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to do it exactly the way I want to do it. For example, when I was going to college, I wanted to study chemistry. And my dad was like, what are you going to do with a chemistry degree? Like, why would you study that? It seems so pointless. You know, you want to do business. Why are you challenging yourself unnecessarily?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, no, I want to do this. I'll figure out how I'll use it, but I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And cut to today, like my chem degree is what I use as a basis to develop products in our lab now. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of just has kind of come full circle. So I think that rebellious nature definitely does take you to a certain point. Another way that happened is because I was always told, you can, oh, come help join our companies, do this, do that when I came back from college.
Mm-hmm.
But today I was sitting there and I was literally just like, I would love to help you guys, but this is kind of a dream passion of mine that I've been wanting to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start a cosmetic company and do
Okay.
something no one we know is currently doing.
All right.
So yeah, that's kind of how I grew up in my own little, like, I want to do exactly what I want to do, stubborn mentality. But I think it worked out for me.
Yes, it did. It did. So any particular childhood memory that you would like to share with us? I mean, with your parents or siblings or whatever.
Um, Honestly, I feel like growing up, we had like the best environment, right? To get into any kind of whatever. I just feel like you always saw, like, I always saw dad coming home from work and like talking about, whatever he was doing, what happened in his day. Mom would do the same. And I always found it so inspiring. I
Mm-hmm.
think all of us would just kind of sit, like me, my siblings, my parents, like once everyone was home in their room and just have like chats in the evening. And I remember as a child, I used to kind of be really frustrated when my parents would like be talking about work and whatever. But I think, when you hear those kind of conversations from the get go, it's just something that kind of gets into your blood. And now today, I'm part of those conversations, and my siblings are just like, why are you like this? Can you guys talk about something else for once in your lives?
Mm.
But
Okay.
yeah.
So why cosmetics and how did you kind of get into it? I mean, chemistry, okay, you wanted to do. So how did it kind of gravitate towards getting into
So
makeup and
honestly,
cosmetics?
when I was in school,
Mm.
I never wore any makeup. It was just like, we weren't allowed to in school. I never really discovered it until like, say I graduated school and I, like bought an eyeliner, bought a lipstick, was like, okay, let's try something new here.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to college and, you're in America, you're in like Carnegie Mellon, you have Sephora right there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like I was also growing as a person. So initially, when I had gone to college, I was like, let's do chemistry, let's see what we can make out of this. Because I love to make things, like, create something new in the lab. That was always a really fun experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I got really into makeup in college because my friends were teaching me things, people were showing me things. You're in America, all these new things are coming out every day, like there's all this exposure that you get. And it just became something that I was really into. Now, I'm not a very big, bold, crazy makeup person. I am a very minimal makeup person.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the exposure, just like generally touching, feeling the products, and realizing what goes into making them, because I was also simultaneously doing my degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it just got this little curiosity out in me. And I felt like there was like a serious gap in the market, at least when it comes to makeup in this country. I feel like there was something that could be done to make the products even better for people who could use them for all kinds of reasons, right? Makeup is mostly about confidence to me, honestly. You put
Mm-hmm.
on a nice lipstick, you feel like better about yourself. You just feel more confident. Like to me, this CEO lipstick is exactly that, like it gives you that boost of confidence that you're looking for. And I think just learning all these things together, getting that exposure, getting that chem degree, kind of pairing it all, I kind of fell in love with makeup and decided this is something I'm going to do. I remember coming back during COVID because we couldn't stay in college, right? So I was back
Yeah.
home and I actually like was sitting in my kitchen formulating like little skincare products that I sent to my friends, and I was like, "Oh guys, try this. I've made something," like they were still like chemical based because I actually sourced some like chemicals from suppliers in Delhi only, like small samples. And
Mm-hmm.
I started creating my own products. I sent them to my friends. They were like, wow, how did you make this? And I think it was just like that, just kind of brings that whole love of chemistry, love of products out. And that's why I think today, even I'm always striving to create something that's different that no one else is doing, because why do what everyone else is doing? That's kind of boring.
So the gap you felt was in terms of there not being enough quality products. That's what you mean when you say there's a gap in the market?
So, at least what we're doing at Type is not something that anyone is doing anywhere in the world, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we decided to do, I was always very into skincare. So,
Yeah.
initially, I was thinking of doing like a skincare line.
Mm-hmm.
I came back and I realized that's very saturated. Every other person is doing a skincare line. There's always so much going on. Obviously, there's ways to innovate in there, but
Yeah.
I felt like this space was a little tight. So, what I thought was, why not mix my love of skincare with my love of makeup and put
Okay.
it all together to create Type, which again, some people are doing internationally. They have skincare backed makeup products in America for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the way we've taken it is to take it a step further and customize it based on your specific skin concerns, which is why it's called Type, because
Okay.
it's just your
That's why it's called
type.
type. So it's called type because it is based on a person's skin type, so to say. Is that what it
Exactly.
is? Okay,
Yes.
interesting. Very interesting.
So, like for example, every product range we take out, say you have a foundation, we'll have 4 foundations for you. So, based
Okay.
on whatever your concerns, your skin type is, you can find the right foundation for your skin.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. That sounds really good. So, okay. So any kind of, I mean, I'm sure the journey you faced a lot of challenges. I mean, as a young entrepreneur, one, and two, being a female. So, could you just kind of, elaborate on these?
I think first things first, as a young entrepreneur, I feel like with my parents, they just kind of threw me into the deep end. They were like, this is your baby. You will
Mm-hmm.
sort it out. You will handle everything yourself. And I was like, yeah, completely. You have our support. You have our teams if you need any, like, anyone to get advice from, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I always had a good support system, but I was allowed to be independent enough that I was never under anyone's thumb, so to speak, even
Mm-hmm.
being so young. I think definitely the coupling of being a young woman entrepreneur does take its toll, because I know I've had conversations with suppliers and people where they haven't taken me seriously, where I've had my team talk to them because they were just like, what is this like young girl telling us? Like, how can she be the one who is in charge of this whole situation?
Yeah.
And I always very much was. So I found that really frustrating, especially just like it's just Indian culture, right? So at some point, there's a lot of barriers to break, but there's only so much you can do. And sometimes it's better to step away from the situation than to be completely inside it and cause yourself unnecessary stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if it gets to a situation where a supplier wasn't listening to me, wasn't respecting my opinion, so to say, I
Mm-hmm.
would have someone from my team take over and just handle it, to the point that I am not involved until you need final level authorization.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I think they realize your level and your value in the play in the space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is one challenge I definitely have faced. A lot of other challenges you face, this is not necessarily for being a woman, but like there are obviously language barriers, right? Because we work with a lot of our packaging comes through internationally. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with that as well, right? So there's a way to deal with other people's schedules and kind of how they function. So different countries function in different ways, which I've learned recently, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of interesting actually, if you think about it,
Yeah.
because the exposure you get to different cultures is kind of cool in this job.
Yes, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
nothing in particular because you're a woman. So like people, or maybe makeup is a thing where woman being there is not like something extraordinary or, out of the ordinary in that sense.
Actually, it still is. Now, of course, we have a lot more women entrepreneurs in this space.
Mm,
But this story that I'm telling you about, like the packaging and whatever, like my packaging was actually delayed by 3 months. And the supplier was from India and he wasn't being able to get the product shipped on time. I had a launch exactly 1 week from the day it was supposed to arrive.
mm,
And this guy was just like blocking me. He was like not telling me the full truth.
mm,
And at this point, I used to handle all of our purchases directly, at least for packaging, because I was very, on the ball about this because it changes your entire supply chain, right? Everything else is handled by us. This is outsourced.
mm,
I was dealing with it myself and I was literally calling the supplier on a daily basis to say, where is my packaging? Please bring it to me.
mm,
Eventually, like it got to the point where my launch was the next day. I was having a photo shoot like that day to make sure that like the products can go out on time. And I was on a call with the supplier and I was just like, can you please get me my product on time? Like you told me it was going to be here 2 weeks ago. What is going on? It
mm.
was just like a really bad situation to the point that like I was almost in tears because the opposite person is lying to you. You
Yeah,
are sitting here like, please, I'm so frustrated. My timelines are going to get delayed. Everything is going to go off. Like, please, and this was very early in our journey. So I was still not used to this like culture of delays as much as I am now. It
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
But it was so bad. And I remember that like I was literally on the phone with this guy and I was like 5 seconds from tears. And I had to have like my purchasing head like take over.
Mm.
He had a 5 minute conversation with this guy and got all the truth out of him.
Okay,
And it was
okay.
just really frustrating. It was just one of those situations where you're just like,
So you think it was because you're a young girl, that's why it was like,
yeah,
maybe.
definitely, to an extent at least. I mean,
Mm.
I've managed to teach that supplier his lesson, but it's fine.
Yeah. So you're a young girl, and of course, there are other, aspects to your life other than, work. And of course, you have friends, partying, all of that. So how do you balance everything? And of course, your future also, how do you think you'll be able to balance different parts of your life?
I think right now, the way I like to do it is I try to maintain the balance where my social life is more on the weekends and my work life is more during the week. I like to say, and my entire team likes to say, that I am a workaholic to some extent for sure.
Mm,
Um, and because of that, you'll find they have a running joke actually in the office that if you text Ananya at 6 a.m. in the morning or you text her at midnight, she's going to reply and give you facts
okay.
at that point in time. So throughout the week, I'm always working. I never want to be out too late. I never want to be in a position where I'm like tired when I come to work, all of that. I always want to be here giving my best.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, on the weekends, I do make a lot of time to spend with my friends. I love hanging out with them, you know that. But I make a lot of time to see my friends then. We do all kinds of stuff, honestly. But I like to make sure that it's on the weekend and not during the week, just so that my everything is balanced the right way.
That's the way to be. You have to be focused and practical. And of course, yeah, I get that. So your biggest success so
I
far?
think
Sorry, sorry, sorry. What did you say?
I was just saying, going into the future, I really don't know how I'll balance it. I
But
think right
if
now I have much
your
time.
ground rules are in place and you kind of know that this is how I'm going to do it, then you will find a way around it, because you know
Yeah.
that this is how I'm going to function. So you will. You know, it's
I tend to do it with a lot of planning. So my to-do list is like a really big part of my life. And I stick very close to it so that
that's
everything gets done. Organization is key, I guess.
so your biggest success so far.
My biggest success so far. Type is my biggest success so far. I think we've honestly been live for less than a year,
Okay.
and we managed to create a really like a known brand name. And I think that in itself is such a big deal. But also, we've managed to create a very large portfolio of products.
Mm,
So not only do we have your concealers, your foundations, your lipsticks, your lip glosses, your eyeshadows, we're coming out with some new stuff soon.
mm,
Primers, yeah. We have a huge range in very little time. I think definitely lately I've been having a lot of those moments where I'm just like, oh my God, this is actually happening because we got featured in Vogue 3 times.
wow.
Um, we got featured in Cosmo, Bazaar, Grazia, all the big names, and we don't pay for PR.
Okay.
So it's just like we send products and we get these reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really cool. That's something that's made it definitely to my top of my list.
Mm.
And yeah, I just got recognized for being like top 100 women leaders or whatever. That was really cool too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm aware.
By your story, that was a big moment for me as well. But yeah,
Okay.
I think for me, the success is in the little things and the customer satisfaction. Honestly, that's my biggest success to date.
Yeah, as I guess it should be because, that's how you build the brand loyalty and customer loyalty and all of that.
The
So
other
you
day, a
see
customer
yourself, yeah.
messaged
Sorry?
sorry, the other day a customer messaged me and she said that she tried our products and like it gave her the confidence to leave the house in a happy like way. And that to me is what it's all about. Like that's literally it.
Yeah. So you see yourself doing the same thing 10 years from now?
I definitely see myself in beauty 10 years from
Mm,
I think starting type was like a dream of mine. And I think in 10 years, hopefully, we'll have grown it to a point where it's kind of ubiquitous and it's worldwide, hopefully.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely see myself doing that, maybe launching more brands. Let's see.
Okay.
10 years is a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. So how do you keep yourself motivated? I mean, I'm sure there are days when, you're kind of a little low and not so upbeat about, you know, anything happening, or the days when, you're frustrated because things are not going your way, or because the way you want them to go, it's not happening like that. So then how do you keep yourself motivated or on track on those kind of days?
Honestly, I think I have a really good support system. I know this is like a strange thing to say, but a lot of my friends are also entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes talking to them really, really helps because you're like, hey, I am having like the worst day.
Mm-hmm.
And your friends will be like, hey, me too, but here's how we're going to move on from that. So you have like a 5 minute conversation about something really random, but
Mm.
it kind of realigns you. That and always keeping myself well planned, trying not to overwork myself. That's a really big one these days for me because I think in the beginning I really did overwork myself to an extent where I felt sick and then it was just like I couldn't work anymore. So I wasn't even giving my 100% anymore, right? So something that's become really important to me is to take that time to rest and kind of give back to your body, to yourself,
Yeah,
just to avoid that burnout. Like you have to do it, you have to give yourself that time because otherwise it's just constant and you're never going to be able to break away mentally, right? And I think sometimes you just need a little bit of me time to kind of refresh.
yes, 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 that is very true. Because I guess if you just go on and on and on, so somewhere you are going to reach a breaking point, and that's never a good idea. So yeah, these little
Exactly.
breaks and yeah, yeah, those help. So you go on holidays, vacations with your family?
Honestly, this year has been I've managed to do it, but I like to take my vacations strategically. I plan them around my work. And if I'm feeling like I've just had a few months of just too much going on or whatever, I'll take like a weekend trip somewhere close so
Mm-hmm.
that I can just like, either be by myself or be with friends and just like kind of detach a little bit. I'm never not working, even on vacation. But it's good to be in a different place. It gives you a change of environment, change of pace, helps you to kind of reset, come up with new ideas also. So I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of vacations. I just don't do them as often as I would like to.
Yeah, I guess with your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in this young life of yours, some of the most important learnings, can you share some of these with us?
Not everything goes to plan. That is definitely my number one learning.
Mm.
Something will always go wrong. Always give extra time to things.
Mm.
Don't, for example, if you're launching a product and you think, you know what, this is the day I want to launch it on, there is like a 99.9% chance something is going to get delayed. So always give yourself a buffer,
Mm.
not like sitting there at the last moment waiting for suppliers to give you your product for all the manufacturing to be finished. So always give a good buffer time and make sure that like you're okay with things not going to plan. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is definitely you're in control.
Sorry,
That
say that
means
again?
that the second thing is that you're in control.
Yes.
And
Okay.
if you have a launch date in mind and the consumer doesn't yet know about it, it's okay to delay.
Yeah.
You don't have to put that much pressure on yourself, like, because you can and it can become a lot, but it's important to make sure that like everything happens systematically. And the third one is definitely be organized. I can't live without being organized. I need everything in my life to have a place, time, everything set up.
Mm.
Even sometimes the least organized person.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to try.
Mm.
And definitely give yourself time for R&R, give yourself time for your friends, give yourself time to just be you. Because honestly, at 24, I'm sitting here and realizing, you do so many things for work, but you don't want to lose this time in your life. So make sure you're giving back to yourself. That's important.
Yeah, that is true. So, you are successful and you're young and you're a woman. How do you think, I mean, not only based on your experience, but even based on experiences of other women around you, how do you think the world reacts to a successful woman in today's day and age?
I think it depends on a
Mm.
lot of things. And I do think it depends by generation, by background, by a lot of different things.
Mm.
I think in my own circle, I've been very fortunate to have very supportive friends, family, everyone around me, always cheering me on.
Mhm.
But I have seen other cases where, like it's always just about XYZ other things. It's never about your career and how focused you are on that, right? Even today, like even if I am sitting here and I'm saying like, oh, I have a brand, I run a company, I do this, that, the other. There's always going to be someone who's going to poke a finger at you and be like, oh, but what about your future, beta? And you're just going to be like, this is my future.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
hello. I feel like I've been fortunate, but I feel like a lot of other people face much harsher challenges than I do. I think being a woman in business is still very difficult. It's not exactly the easiest thing. You have to make sacrifices. You have to make sure that you're, here for your work, here for your family, here for your friends, here for whatever. And I feel like very often that puts a lot on people's plates. And the expectations from women are just higher, unfortunately, than they are for men. And
Even
I don't mean this
even now?
I don't, I don't, I don't mean this in like a work focused way. I definitely mean this in more of like a home focused way. Like you are expected to do certain things. I definitely think it's less now, a
Mhm.
lot less, at least. But there is still that expectation. We live in a patriarchal society. There's only so much that can change, right? And change is coming. It's just coming slowly. And I think something that's really important is that we have these conversations and that people hear about more women succeeding in their work, in anything at all, because I feel like that just motivates more women to go out and do that, right? I feel like it's really important to present strong role models, because if you don't have that, then like there's no one for you to go ahead and chase after, you know? Does that make
Correct.
sense?
Yeah, it does. A lot of sense. Okay, so maybe not for you and maybe not at this age, but I'm sure you've heard of people or seen people who, maybe in their late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, suddenly decide to switch gears, as I say, change their careers. So somebody was a banker and suddenly decided to take up farming. Somebody was, maybe teaching and decided to take up acting, or somebody who was a doctor decided to start writing. Why do you think people are doing that? I mean, earlier, if I remember, people used to kind of start doing a particular thing, maybe start a business and then keep doing it till whatever time they wanted to work. And nobody ever thought of doing something different. But now, if we look around us, we find that a lot of people have started doing things which are different also. So when they change to something which is quite drastic. So, why do you think people do that?
I think as we an entire society, the really interesting shift is that now it's all about your passions, right? Everything is on social media. You have this enormous amount of information, right? Earlier, you start off, say, like, I want to be a banker, and that's all you know, and that's what you want to go ahead and do for XYZ amount of time. Today, if you look at it and say, you know what, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, there's 100 different ways to learn about something else, right? And start on a different track. That is one thing. Secondly, I think people have become more focused on themselves and their happiness. The societal shift that you see right now is kind of coming from a place of I want to explore my passions, I want to be happy. We're talking a lot more about mental health. We're talking about what's important to us as people, what can help us grow, right? If you're feeling like you're in a certain job and you're stuck and it's not making you happy, and whatever other causes may be there, you can learn a new thing very easily. Now the conversation has shifted to follow your passions. I think that's why this is happening more and more,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think at least like for us, we were brought up with the position of like, follow your passions, do what you like, do what you're good at, but also what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just think it's information, honestly, today. Information is like the largest contributor.
Okay. So you see that there is a lot that people can see around them. They can see other people doing it, and it is also a lot to do, about being happy. Finding your happiness, finding your peace. So you decide to explore, and yes, maybe like financially, people have that, they have this much of, I have the liberty financially. I'm strong enough to be able to try different things, which perhaps was not there earlier.
Yeah, I that's definitely one thing, but also you see nowadays a lot of young people in the workforce have side hustles.
Hmm.
So they are doing their 9 to 5 and they're also working on their passion project on the side. So that's another really nice way to do that, and balance everything together. So
Hmm.
it's kind of cool to see all of these things happening,
Yes,
honestly.
definitely. Very refreshing and a big change. So, you, like I said, young girl, successful, all of that. So, any piece of advice that you would like to give to, girls who are still in college, maybe still in high school, who aspire to do something or to become something, or they're just on the threshold of their lives and their careers? Anything that you would like to tell them?
I think for me, to younger generations, the most important piece of advice is do what you love, obviously, but also make sure to learn what you're doing. It's very important to say that. You can't just say follow your passions and then follow a passion you have no idea how to go ahead and do, right? So make sure you're planning your future smartly. Make sure you're planning it according to what you think. And you're at a stage in your life right now where you can literally do anything. So make sure you keep your options open so that you have the ability to move forward. Secondly, it's a really digital world. So you have the opportunity to explore and see what other people are doing out there. So definitely go ahead and like learn as much as you can. I'm a big proponent of learning. I love it. But yeah, I just think equip yourself with the skills that you're going to need to be anything in this world, whether it's like a CEO, whether it's like, I don't know, a vet, anyone, anything you want to do in your life, just make sure that you have the basis and the structure for it so that you're not in a position later where you have to go back, which is also okay. But if you've decided something in your head, if you have an idea of where wants to go, then just follow.
And how important is it for a woman to be financially independent?
I think it's very important. I think it's very, very important for a woman to be financially independent, especially in India. I feel like a lot of women in this country are forced to, be tied to XYZ bad situations just because they don't have financial independence. And it's really, really important for a woman to have the power to be able to hold her own head high, be able to stand on her own shoulders. It's not only important from a perspective of like safety and like your own happiness and whatever else, it's more important from a perspective of advancing the entire country, right? The entire economy. It's very, very important. And I really believe it's important, even as like just one person, to have your own financial independence. It makes a world of difference in your happiness in your life.
And how about being emotionally independent? Does that apply to women? Should they be emotionally independent? Should they strive to become emotionally independent?
I think we live in a very collectivistic society. I don't think you should be dependent on anyone for your happiness. But very often we're in a place where, we have these like families, everyone's very close knit, everyone is very like on top of each other, for lack of other words. And of course, that's going to affect you in certain ways. But I think the most important thing is to be able to detach from that sometimes and just protect your own peace.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like, you obviously are going to give to XYZ situations, but the best thing to do is also give yourself some space and some time.
Correct.
I'm not talking about complete emotional independence because that is hard to do in this kind of a society, but I do think that you have to give yourself time and space.
Okay. So, can a woman have it all?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I definitely think so. At least in my head, you definitely can. There are just ways to go about it, and you have to make sure that structure is in place to make sure you can do it, right? Schedule, structure, lots of things, but I think it's definitely doable.
So that means you can have a career, you can have a family, you can find happiness in everything. So you mean to say that as compared to a man or as compared to men, we can be happier because our lives are more fulfilled in that sense? Because as mothers, as wives, as sisters, and then as being women who are financially independent, do you think our lives are more fulfilled in that sense, or you think there's not much of a difference?
I don't see much of a difference, honestly, because you see women as mothers, sisters, whatever. You also see men as fathers, brothers, whatever, right? So you have the ecosystem. It's just that some men may not be willing to give as much to that, right? It's just a matter of perspective. I don't think it's about male versus female in that situation.
Okay. And you definitely feel that we've come to a stage where women have always had families and have always been in relationships in that sense. But now, in this day and age, we can have it all because we have a career too, and because we make our own money too. So, in that sense, we are as good or bad as anybody else. Right? Is that what
Better, but that's just a personal